Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about battling the mindset of working harder. And this episode is especially for those of you who, probably like me, grew up being rewarded for working hard, who got ahead and got results by working harder than other people, and who currently, or at some point in the past, had a big part of their identity tied to being a hard worker. This is something that I've been reflecting on quite a bit lately. And as I've been having conversations with clients and with business besties, and even with some of the content that I've been posting on social media, it seems like this one has really kind of hit a thread, and people seem to have a lot to say about this. So I wanted to share some of my thoughts in today's episode. And I wanted to start with a story that I recently shared on social media that got quite a bit of interaction. I've gotten so many text messages and so many emails from this story. So I want to kind of go back in time a little bit, about 20 years ago. And around that time, when my husband and I were first dating before we were married, one of the things that we would do every year is we would go out to Herkimer, New York, and we would mine for diamonds. Now, as someone who has been a jewelry designer for the past, I don't even know how many years now, 30 years or so. I've had a jewelry business for a little over 20. And as someone who has been completely obsessed with rocks and minerals and crystals since a very small child, Herkimer, New York was like my dream place to go. We would camp overnight at the campground right across from the diamond mine, and then we would spend our days mining for diamonds. And if you've ever been there before, or if you know anything about Herkimer, it's a really great mine. You can go and you can actually find diamonds right on the ground. And you can also bring tools with you and start to break open some of the rocks, and you can find diamonds within those. There's other things you could do too, but those are the sorts of things that most people do when they just go there for fun. Being the overly ambitious person that I am, as much as I enjoyed finding the smaller diamonds, I, of course, wanted to find the biggest possible diamond that I could find. And so I made it my personal mission that I was going to find a big diamond. And year over year, my husband and I, along with my brother and my sister-in-law, would go out to Herkimer, and we would spend days mining for diamonds, me with always the intention of finding a big diamond. And I never actually did find a big diamond while I was mining. I did eventually find one, though, in the most unpredictable of ways. And what would end up happening is every single year, as we would wrap up our trip, I would very reluctantly decide to leave and pack up the car to go home because I wanted to stay just one more hour, just a little bit longer, because maybe, just maybe, I'd find the big diamond if I kept digging, if I kept looking. And all of my strategies, from the time I would get to Herkimer to the entire car ride on the way home when I was leaving Herkimer, planning ahead to the next year, was all about working harder and mining longer. I'd be thinking maybe we could go for longer next year, or maybe we could get a better start. Maybe if we just go earlier in the morning, or we stay later at night until they close. Maybe we could bring better tools. Maybe we could try different areas. Everything I was doing was very much about that work harder, do more type of mindset. And when I think about it, it makes sense. That's very much how I grew up. It's just kind of naturally who I am. I'm very much that kind of type A, overachiever, hardworking type of person. I have been since I was a kid. And I found that throughout my life, I would get rewarded for 2 things. I would get rewarded for doing well in school and being smart. And I'm saying that in air quotes. and I would get rewarded and praised for working hard, especially if I worked harder than anybody else. Whether that was in school, whether that was doing something personally, or even playing sports. I have never been an athletic person at all. I played softball and soccer for a lot of years when I was younger, and I was absolutely terrible at it. I mean, I do not have an athletic bone in my body, but I would try. And as long as I worked hard and I tried, I got rewarded and I got celebrated. I remember when I was younger, I was on a soccer team called the Roughnecks. I don't even remember what it was. It was probably like a plumbing company or something, I think, in the town where I grew up. And you got to take home the soccer ball if you did a really good job. And I mean, if we're being honest, I never really did a very good job. But I worked really hard because I didn't like not being good at something. So I would work harder and harder and harder to try to get better at it. And so I remember I got to take home the soccer ball one week. And I was so proud. I was little, I was probably like 7, but I was so proud that I got to take home the soccer ball. And it was because I had worked hard. And all throughout school, when I was younger, I was rewarded for working hard. And then I got a job and I was rewarded for working hard. And I got promoted because I worked hard. And I got celebrated and I achieved awards because I worked hard. And I was so conditioned to working hard, resulting in some sort of appreciation, some sort of celebration, making more money, that I kind of wrapped my identity up in being someone who worked hard. And so it makes total sense that as I'm at Herkimer and I can't find my big diamond, the way that I think to approach it is to naturally work harder, to figure out how to do more. It's what I had always done. And one of the challenges with being someone who is rewarded and celebrated for being a hard worker, or for being someone who identifies with being a hard worker, is you always feel like you could have worked just a little bit harder. Doesn't matter how hard you worked, you always feel like you could have done more. And so even though I had so much fun every time we'd go to Herkimer, even though I loved all of the diamonds that I would find, and we would bring home trunkfuls of rocks, which were just gorgeous. I still have them all over my yard. My parents have them all over their yard. But either way, I would always be thinking, did I not mine in the right area? Did I not start early enough? Should I have stayed another day? Always thinking that I should have been doing something more. And so this went on for years. Many, many years we would go to Herkimer. And again, I never did find a big diamond mining. But let me tell you about how I finally did find my big diamond. So, as you can imagine, if you are digging in the dirt or you are banging on rocks with hammers and other tools, it's a pretty dirty job. You're usually pretty covered in dust and dirt. And so they have sink stations around where you can go and wash your hands or wash the dirt and the debris off the diamonds. And so we were just getting ready to call it a trip and head home. And the whole time I'm thinking, I can't believe another year and I still did not find my diamond. And so I go over to the sink to wash my hands, and wouldn't you know, there is this absolutely gorgeous 2-inch Herkimer diamond sitting right there on the sink. I just remember looking at it and looking all around me to think, did somebody leave this here? Somebody must have left this here. Like, who left it? Was it a kid? Was it? And I'm like looking all around to try to find people because my first instinct was, I need to find who lost this and make sure that they get it back because I have spent years searching for something like this and it's just sitting right here on the sink. And I'm looking all around me. There's no one. Whoever left it there was long, long gone. And now it doesn't look like a normal diamond. It's yellow. It's got this absolutely gorgeous yellowy, citrine color on the outside of it. It's got all of these inclusions and these other rocks and crystals embedded in it. It's very imperfect. But in its imperfection, to me, it is the most perfect and the most beautiful crystal that I own. I am obsessed with this thing. I absolutely love it. It was more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined. And I had spent so many years searching for this to then find it and have it be even better than I I ever could have envisioned was a really, really awesome experience. But what was even more awesome about that experience and why I have that crystal sitting right in front of me right now, I'm looking at it while I'm recording this. It's right underneath my podcast mic on my desk. I look at it every single day. And it's not just because I think it's absolutely beautiful and I love it, but it's to remind me that results come from a lot of different things, and results do not only come from working hard. If I had not found that crystal where I found it, I might still be there 20 years later, once a year, spending multiple days digging for crystals and never having found one. No matter how much harder I worked, no matter how much more I did, I may have never found anything like it. It took being in the right place at the right time and a little bit of serendipity in order to find that crystal. And so I keep it right in front of me to remind me of that. Because although I've done a lot of work over the years in trying to break my identity as being that person who only gets ahead and only gets results when they work hard, it is something that's so deeply conditioned within me that I have to fight it naturally, that I do have to fight it. And I do have to frequently remind myself that I can be a hard worker and not have to work hard. So I'm going to say that again. I think I'm actually going to turn that into a quote to go along with this episode because there's probably some other people out there that need to hear this. Just because you're a hard worker does not mean you have to work hard. Being a hard worker and working hard are two entirely different things. I am and always will be a hard worker. It's how I naturally think. It's how I naturally approach things. But what I've learned over the years is to not approach things by automatically or naturally working hard. I am always trying to work smarter. It's why I'm doing so much with AI lately. It's why I have my new AI program. It's why I'm infusing it into so much of what I'm doing, because it allows me to work so much smarter and it allows me to help my clients work so much smarter. I mean, I've gotten back almost an entire day in my week. I can't say a full day yet because I've only gotten back 6.5 hours per week, but with things that I'm working on, it will be 8 hours soon enough and I'll be able to say a full day a week. The amount of money that it has saved me, it saved me an entire full-time person plus some on my team. So if given the option to sit here and spend a few hours or a few days doing something that I can have AI do for me in 30 minutes, you better believe I'm using AI for it. But even aside from AI, I am always consistently looking at how can I be more efficient? How can I help my clients be more efficient? How can I make this simpler? How can we keep working smarter and keep things lean? You know, that's the question I ask every single guest on the podcast. How do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean in your business? So while I'm always looking for and identifying new ways to work smarter and work more efficiently, what it took me a long time to shift is not filling in those hours that I used to spend working with more work. I used to be your classic 80 to 100 hour a week person. And when I eventually dropped that to 60, and then I eventually dropped that to 40, it was a really, really hard transition for me. But the transition was more of a mental transition than anything else. It was an identity transition. It wasn't that I didn't have a lot of other things that I wanted to do or people that I wanted to spend time with or things that I hadn't been doing because I was working so much that I really wanted to create the space for. It was more that without working hard and without constantly working, I almost didn't know who I was, or I felt like I was lazy or like people wouldn't take me seriously. And the thing is, I know a lot of people who feel this way, or a lot of people who at one point in time really identified with being a hard worker and can still struggle with it or can still find themselves, especially in periods of high stress, falling right back into those types of behaviors. So what I'll say is you are not defined by how hard you work and you are not defined by how much you work. Everyone seems to have an opinion about how much people should work. On one extreme, you've got the Alex Hormozy types who are basically like, trade your personal life, work nonstop. It's what it takes to be successful. Just do it, right? If you're focused on having a morning routine, or if you're focused on doing anything but working, you're not serious. So you have people like that on one extreme. And then on the other extreme, if you're not doing almost like this extreme laptop lifestyle type of business model, and you're working more than 4 to 10 hours a week, then you're doing something wrong. And the reality is, there are different seasons of business and life. There are different seasons of our own identity evolution. And there are points in time when you are legit going to want to be working a lot. And there are points in time when you are not going to want to be working a lot. There are also points in time when you might have to work a lot, and other points in time when you might not be able to work a lot. So don't let anybody make you ever feel guilty for how much you're working. Whether it's too little or too much for them, it might be just right for you. The issue is when you're working more than you want to, when you're working more than you know you should be right now in this season of life and business and all the things. When you know that you're doing things in a way that's harder than you have to, when you know you could be doing things smarter, you could be doing things simpler, you could be doing things leaner. That's where you want to be making changes, but you don't want to make changes just because someone has some opinion of how much you should be working. And when it comes to working hard, you can be a natural hard worker and still choose to not work any harder than you have to. And if you're really smart and you're really strategic and you're really efficient, and especially if you embrace AI and start to look at some really strategic ways to be leveraging that, you can find yourself working smarter in pretty much everything that you do. But the biggest challenge is probably going to be in your head. I'd like to think that that was only me that had that experience, but so many of the people that I share this story with tell me that they've felt the exact same way. So if that's you, know that you are not alone and find your version of a Herkimer diamond, whatever that thing is that you can look at, whether it's a physical object, whether it's a memory, whether it's something, some experience that you've had so far in your life, where when you look at it, you realize that the results that you got that ended up way better than the results that you ever even could have imagined, came about not because of working hard, but because of putting yourself in the right place at the right time, because of working smarter, or because of simply setting an intention, holding that intention, and allowing for serendipity to happen. For me, it's my Herkimer diamond, and that's why I keep it front and center right on my desk, right under my microphone, so I'm looking at it all the time. For you, whatever it is, find something to remind yourself that you do not constantly have to keep working harder and harder and harder in order to get the results that you want. I know this episode was a little different than what I normally do, but I hope you got a lot of value out of it, and I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.